If you were told that a single book exists, one so dangerous that merely reading it could shatter your sanity, would you dare to open it? Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Strange Tales, because the story you're about to hear is not just unsettling, it's something that has haunted minds for centuries. It begins in the silence of the desert night. In ancient Arabia, long before modern science tried to explain every strange phenomenon, people believed the world was filled with unseen entities. When the winds stopped blowing and the darkness grew heavier, a peculiar sound would echo through the empty lands. To most, it resembled insects chirping, but to those who believed, it was something far more disturbing. They called it Azif. Not just a sound, but a presence. A whisper carried through the night. Some said it was the movement of jinn. Others believed it was their breathing, or even their distant cries. And from these chilling sounds, a legend was born. A book that would later be whispered about across generations as one of the most dangerous texts ever conceived, Kitab al-Azif. Unlike ordinary writings, this was not a collection of stories or poetry. It was said to contain symbols no one could fully understand, languages that no longer exist, and diagrams that seemed to defy logic. Those who claimed to have seen fragments of it described disturbing illustrations, figures that didn't resemble humans, animals, or anything known to this world. Its origin traces back to a man surrounded by mystery and fear, Abdul Alhazred. In historical references, he is often described as a poet from Sana'a, Yemen. But among those who studied forbidden knowledge, he was known by another name, Al-Arabi al-Majnun, the Mad Arab. People didn't call him mad without reason. It was said that Abdul Alhazred spoke of things no one else could see. He described encounters with unseen beings, claimed to have traveled through desolate ruins where no human dared to go, and insisted that the world held secrets far older than humanity itself. At first, many dismissed him as nothing more than a troubled mind. But then his writings began to spread. He didn't just write poetry, he documented experiences. He spoke of ancient civilizations that existed before humans. Not myths, not metaphors, but real entities, powerful and intelligent, who once ruled the earth. According to him, humanity was not the beginning. Alhazred claimed that during his travels, he ventured into the ruins of ancient Babylon. There, among crumbling stones and forgotten temples, he encountered individuals who practiced forms of knowledge that were deliberately erased from history. He wrote about meeting sorcerers, people who possessed texts so dangerous that even touching them was considered a risk. He didn't stop there. He spoke of traveling deeper into isolated regions, where he encountered small, hidden communities living far from the rest of civilization. Among them were groups he referred to as the Sabaeans, people who, according to his accounts, preserved ancient traditions and languages long lost to the world. Languages that he began to learn. Languages that later appeared in Kitab al-Azif. But perhaps the most terrifying part of his story was what he claimed to have witnessed in the desert. He wrote about discovering the ruins of a lost city, Ad, a civilization mentioned in Islamic tradition, often associated with immense power and eventual destruction. Many believed it to be a warning from history, but Alhazred claimed it was more than that. He said he stood among its remains. And he was not alone. According to his writings, it was there that he encountered jinn, not as fleeting shadows or whispers in the dark, but as entities with form, presence, and knowledge far beyond human understanding. He believed they communicated with him, taught him, showed him truths that no human was meant to comprehend. This is where things begin to take a darker turn, because after these encounters, Abdul Alhazred changed. His writings became more intense, more chaotic. The structure of his words shifted, as if he was trying to describe something that couldn't fully be explained in human language. He began to document rituals, symbols, and methods of communication with these entities. And all of it was compiled into one work. Kitab al-Azif. The name itself holds meaning. In Arabic, azif refers to the sound of insects at night. But in ancient belief, it was never just insects. It was the sound of the unseen world, the subtle reminder that something exists beyond human perception, something always watching. Alhazred believed that these sounds were not random. They were signals, evidence of another layer of reality overlapping our own. And through his book, he attempted to decode it. But here's where the fear truly begins. Because people who studied his work, or claimed to, didn't just describe it as strange. They described it as dangerous. There were whispers that those who tried to read Kitab al-Azif experienced disturbing visions. Some claimed to hear voices. Others reported losing their sense of reality altogether. And then, there were those who simply disappeared from historical record. No explanation, no trace, just gone. It raised a question that still lingers today. Was Abdul Alhazred truly documenting something real? Or was he slowly losing his mind and taking others with him? What makes this even more unsettling is that references to Kitab al-Azif didn't completely vanish. Over time, fragments of its legend appeared in various texts and discussions, often described in ways that were strikingly consistent. A forbidden book, a mad author, and knowledge that comes at a cost. Some scholars believe that Alhazred's work may have been influenced by real ancient traditions, distorted over time through fear and exaggeration. Others argue that his writings reflect a psychological descent into madness, shaped by isolation and obsession. But then there are those who believe something far more disturbing. That Kitab al-Azif was never just a book. It was a doorway. And Abdul Alhazred didn't just write it. He opened something. And if that's true, the real question isn't whether the book existed. It's whether its knowledge still does. If this story pulled you into the unknown, don't forget to subscribe to Strange Tales, because some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only uncovered. What if the real danger of Kitab al-Azif was never the book itself, but what it leaves behind in the minds of those who seek it? Before we go deeper, subscribe to Strange Tales, because this final part only gets darker and the truth becomes harder to ignore. As the story of Abdul Alhazred spread beyond Arabia, his name slowly transformed from that of a poet into something far more unsettling. He was no longer remembered for his words, but for what those words revealed. And what they revealed terrified people. Over time, accounts began to surface, fragmented, inconsistent, yet strangely connected. Scholars, travelers, and historians would occasionally mention a forbidden manuscript. Not always by the same name, not always in the same language, but the descriptions matched. A book filled with symbols no one could decode. A book that spoke of beings older than humanity. A book that was never meant to be understood. Some of these references appeared centuries after Abdul Alhazred's death, which only deepened the mystery. If the original text had truly been lost, how did its influence continue? One explanation was simple: copies. But that idea created an even greater fear. Because if copies existed, it meant that the knowledge inside Kitab al-Azif was still circulating, still being read, still affecting those who came into contact with it. And this is where the line between history and unease begins to blur. There are accounts, rare and difficult to verify, of individuals who claimed to have encountered fragments of the text. These weren't ordinary readers. They were often people already exploring ancient languages, forgotten traditions, or obscure philosophies. People searching for something. And according to these accounts, what they found was not what they expected. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a difficult manuscript. The symbols were complex, the structure unfamiliar, the meanings unclear. But as they spent more time with it, something began to change. Not in the book, in themselves. Some described an overwhelming sense of being watched, even in complete isolation. Others claimed that the symbols began to feel familiar, as if they were not learning the language, but remembering it. And then came the dreams. Disturbing, vivid, impossible to fully describe. Dreams of vast landscapes, towering ruins, and shapes that didn't belong to any known form of life. In these dreams, the world felt older, heavier, as if time itself had a different meaning. A few even claimed that the sounds followed them into sleep. That same as if. That faint, distant noise, no longer just in the night, but inside their minds. Naturally, many dismissed these accounts as psychological effects. The human brain, when exposed to unfamiliar patterns and intense focus, can create illusions. It can blur the line between reality and imagination. But not all explanations feel complete, because there is one detail that continues to disturb those who study this legend. Consistency. People from different places, different time periods, and different backgrounds, describing similar experiences. Not identical, but close enough to raise questions. How could separate individuals, with no connection to each other, report the same sensations? The same themes? The same underlying fear? Was it coincidence? Or was there something within the text itself that triggered these responses? Another unsettling aspect is the disappearance of the original manuscript. Despite centuries of references, no verified copy of Kitab al-Azif has ever been confirmed to exist today. Some believe it was deliberately destroyed, considered too dangerous to preserve. Others suggest it was hidden, protected by those who understood its value. And then there are theories that it was never meant to remain in one place. That it moves, not physically, but through influence, through fragments, through ideas that embed themselves in other works, other minds, other cultures. If that's true, then Kitab al-Azif may not need to exist as a complete book anymore. Its knowledge could already be scattered across the world, hidden in plain sight. There is also the question of Abdul Alhazred's final days. Historical mentions of his death are vague and inconsistent. Some claim he died in isolation, consumed by his own thoughts. Others suggest a far more disturbing end, that he disappeared suddenly, leaving no clear explanation behind. But the most chilling account is the one that refuses to be forgotten. It is said that he was taken, not by people, but by something he had been trying to understand. According to this version, witnesses claimed that Abdul Alhazred was speaking incoherently in the streets, muttering words no one could recognize. His behavior had become erratic, his appearance unsettling, as if he hadn't slept for days or longer. And then, in a moment that no one could fully explain, he was gone. No struggle, no trace, just absence. Of course, stories like this evolve over time. Details change, elements are added, meanings shift. What begins as a simple account can become something far more dramatic through repetition and imagination. But even when stripped down to its core, the story of Kitab al-Azif leaves behind something difficult to ignore. A pattern. A man who claimed to witness something beyond human understanding. A book that attempted to capture it. And a legacy of fear that refuses to disappear. So what should we believe? Was Abdul Alhazred simply a man lost in his own mind, creating a narrative that others later exaggerated? Or did he truly encounter something and try to document it, knowing that no one would fully believe him? And if he did he succeed? Because if even a fraction of his claims were real, then the implications are unsettling. It would mean that humanity is not as alone as it believes, that history is incomplete, and that some knowledge comes with a price. Perhaps that is why the legend of Kitab al-Azif continues to survive, not because of proof, but because of possibility. The possibility that somewhere, hidden or forgotten, fragments of this knowledge still exist, waiting. And maybe the reason no complete copy has ever been found is not because it was destroyed, but because it was never meant to be found. If this story made you question what lies beyond the visible world, subscribe to Strange Tales, because the most terrifying truths are often the ones we cannot prove, yet cannot ignore.